The shape of the modern game and problems we see at scrummage time, at the breakdown. The problem with rolling mauls, of course, player safety. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the major problems with the game now is the advantage defence has at the breakdown. And surely lawmakers and everybody can see a problem here. The shape of rugby has changed in many ways over the years, but the area of the game that has changed and had the most dramatic effect on the way the game is played and viewed is the sources of possession. Now, once again, the table here looks complex, and there are some areas here we're not going to look at right now. Just simply looking at line out, at scrum, line out, and breakdown positions over Rugby World Cups to start off with from 1987 to 2019, and then Super Rugby matches from 2020-2021. You'll notice there's quite a big gap in the statistics between 2099 and 2019. I simply had a bit tired. I got a bit tired of taking statistics during that period and simply had a break. So looking at the pattern over here, look, this is saying that in 1987 there were on average 28 scrum possessions per game. Then there were also 34 line-out possessions per game and 38 possessions from ruck, maul or tackle, which we're just referring to as the breakdown. 1991 looked 30, 29, 54. 95, that's only the two games, but 23, 33, 55. 1999, 19, 29. Now you can see an obvious pattern here. For Rugby World Cups from 87 to 2019, again, you don't have to be a genius to see what's happened here. Scrums have dramatically decreased, scrum possessions. Lineouts have decreased, not quite as dramatically, but possessions from the breakdown have increased dramatically from 38 in 1987 to 169 in 2019. Now we're seeing the same thing at Super Rugby here. It's quite consistent. In 2020, look, they're averaged 9 possessions from scrums, 25 from line-out, 164 from the breakdown. In 2021, almost the same for scrum and line-out, and almost the same for breakdown possessions. All as this graph here has done, I've combined the scrum and line-outs together, 28 and 34. That gives you the 62, what I'm calling set play possessions. So what this is telling us is teams were getting 62 possessions on average from set play, and realize that at set play, teams with possession have an advantage. They have a 10-metre defence line from line-out and a 5-metre from scrum. At the breakdown, they have 0-metre defence line. But back then, 62 set play possessions, 38 breakdown possessions. And look what's happened through to 2019. Now teams at the 2019 World Cup averaged 31 possessions from set plays and 169 from the breakdown. And you can see the same thing that's happened for these Super Rugby statistics. The use it or lose it law, introduced in 1997, was designed to prevent teams frequently gaining ground through driving mauls and to encourage more open play. This is a classic example of how a law change can produce unintended consequences. The result has been far less mauls, other than driving and rolling mauls, formed from lineouts, and a preponderance of tackle situations where a player in possession goes to ground, placing the ball and a ruck being formed. Now, as a consequence, there has been changes in attack success rates from various phases of play, which will become evident in the statistics and graphs that follow. The set of numbers that appear here, we'll look first of all only at the first line, and we're looking at international and provincial matches played before 1997. 45 matches are in this sample. Now what it's saying here, the success rate crossing the gain line from first phase was 63% on average. 66 from second phase, third and so on. Now, greater than third phase, fourth, fifth and so on, there weren't too many fourth, fifth and subsequent phases back before 1997 anyway, for a number of reasons, but we won't discuss that here. The point is why these have been basically all combined together is that, a team can structure
a play from second phase, some sort of an attacking play from second phase, second phase rather, and then from third phase. But possibly beyond third phase, it gets a bit more difficult. In fact, it gets very difficult. So that we're just combining third and subsequent phases into one category greater than third phase. Now, general play refers to possessions gained from kick receptions, turnovers, etc. How do you judge a success from a play from a kick reception? Well, that's subjective, but whatever play ensued from the kick reception gave the team an advantage. I regard it as a success. The average of all those success rates over those phases is 65%. Now, we'll look at these other numbers later. But at this stage, the graph that appears here is basically just a visual representation of those numbers through to general play. But I want you to have a close look at that, because it's very important that we see that shape and compare it to what's happened since 1997. The most common criticism of rugby today is that it has evolved into a collision sport with a diminishing amount of backline play. Despite the 5 and 10 metre defence lines from scrum and line-out, teams rarely use this first phase advantage for anything else than crash ball plays, designed to gain a territorial metre or two and put the opposition under defensive pressure. Plays involving more than 2 passes are now rare at elite level, as is evidenced by some of the statistics that will follow a bit later. But let's look now at, we've looked at the first line of this data, let's look at subsequent lines. Now, there's a big gap between 1997 and 2014. As I mentioned before, I wasn't taking too many stats in that period of time, but from 2014 I picked up a game. So since 2014, 99 international provincial matches have been analysed. Now these are the success rates from the various phases. And if they're, without going through them, if I plot those numbers like we did before, this is what we get. And notice there's a very different shape between that graph and this one. And we'll come back and look at reasons for it in a moment. But let's continue with the analysis. If we look at now some of the games, part of this 2099 subset here, if we look at New Zealand Super Rugby games in 2020, down here, up here rather, 17 matches were analysed, and look at the shape. Success rate from first, second, third, fourth, general play. Super Rugby AU, the green one down here. First, second, third, fourth, subsequent. Super Rugby 2021, another 22 games analysed here. Look at the shape. We go to 2019 Rugby World Cup. Look at the shape. 2021, the latest set of statistics. If we combine all matches between Australia and New Zealand in Super Rugby 2020-21, 17 matches, we get this shape. And you'll notice, look, there is obvious similarity, not just similarity, they're almost the same for rugby played after 2014. What's caused all this? Well, what's caused it is the fact that most of the possessions we get now in rugby are not from set plays. They're not from first phase. They're from second, third and fourth breakdown plays. And it's at second, third and fourth and subsequent breakdown plays where the attack has to operate against a 0 metre defence line. And a lot of the times they're offside. And thirdly, defensive numbers outnumber attacking numbers. So it's little wonder that after first phase, where you have the advantage of 10 and 5 metre defence lines, that the success rates just keeps dropping. Well, what can be done about it? Let's just look at some more statistics. We're looking at 2020 Super Rugby matches played in Australia. The teams involved, of course, most people are familiar with: Queensland ACT, the Force, Rebels and New South Wales. Well, look, there's a lot of numbers here. What the heck do they all mean? Well, let's simplify things. Let's have a look at this first box here. we're looking at Queensland games against the other 4 teams. And what this is saying is that from scrums, Queensland against the ACT made two plays with more than 2 passes. From lineouts, there was 1 play from where there was more than 2 passes, and 14 from the breakdown, ruckmaul and tackles. Well, how many of these phases were there? Well, over here, there were 6 scrums, 5 lineouts and 55 breakdowns. Okay, so in general there were 17 times from 66 phases that Queensland against the ACT made more than 2 passes. Now you can look at the numbers against the Rebels forces in New South Wales and you can get the summary down here. This is saying there were 44 times more than 2 passes were made from 337 possessions. Look, there were 4 times more than 2 passes were made from 20 possessions. Now that sort of means you'd have to wait 4 from 20. You'd have to wait basically 5 scrums to get a play more than 2 with more than 2 passes being made. From lineouts, 3 times out of 53, you'd have to wait 18 lineouts with Queensland in possession before they made more than 2 passes. And similarly from breakdowns, you'd have to wait 7 breakdown possessions before you saw a play with more than 2 passes. And the number at the end there basically is the average in all those games. Now look, you can stop, as I keep saying, you can stop this video at any time, and if you're interested in all these other statistics for the various teams involved, please feel free to do so. Now, did anything change in 2021? Well, no, they didn't. Remember what this represented? You'd have to wait 8 phases before you saw anything involving more than 2 passes. Well, it was the same in 21. These numbers look pretty much the same. So there basically has been little change. Once upon a time, the laws of rugby league allowed teams to hold onto the ball for an unlimited number of plays. An only mistake or a spilt ball in the tackle resulted in a chance for a possession change. The 4-tackle rule was introduced in '66 and changed to the current 6-tackle rule in 1972. Prior to 1996, a dozen or so continuous plays involved limited passing were common. Rugby at times now can look like pre-1996 rugby league. The clip that's about to be played is quite long, but please hang in there because the message is very, very important.
This, for Hurricanes' point of view, they're in the right part of the field. They need to be patient here. They need to hang on to the ball and just build phases. Maybe try and get a penalty, but they need to hang on to it. Nothing stupid.
Links up with Barrett, steps past one and another before he's caught by the cover. 2 loose forwards working
which is
together.
More than they're going to make after another 35 phases.
For the Hurricanes, after that very disappointing...
This passage of play involves an initial set play with a 10-metre gain, followed by 35 phases during which the Chiefs go nowhere against a well-organised 0-metre defence line. Now, under existing laws, the referee could have penalised both teams for breakdown infringements, but chooses not to, not wanting the match to be decided on a penalty. On 2 occasions, Fafita lifts his knee into a tackler and should have been penalised for dangerous play. In the end, the penalty the Chiefs were striving for was eventually given, and another game was decided by a penalty goal. I have sped the action up and will now jump 10 phases to shorten what would have been 6 minutes of continuous no-gain collision rugby.
Maybe trying to work themselves into position even for a drop kick at goal. Into the last 30 seconds of the game, Barrett. Well, he won't be lining himself up for a drop kick now because he's just taken the ball forward. Fafita saw Kula trying to get over it. They clear him out of the way. Well, they're not really going anywhere, but they've still got the ball, and while they've got the ball, there's hope.
Keep an eye on the phase count in the top left-hand corner of the screen.
Well, they really haven't advanced, but they've still got the ball.
Just jumping a few more phases.
Good discipline from the Chiefs not to give away the penalty. Pettinato now to Barrett. And they do. They go to Fafita. Oh, it goes in hard. bit of an appeal there from
Lifting an ear to a tackler is one of the most dangerous actions in the game. Fafita here does this on 2 occasions and is not penalised. Now, tackles are penalised sometimes for the most innocuous actions that need slow motion replays and sometimes stop frames, just as evidence.
On the 10-metre mark, there's Fafita again. Cruden with the tackle. Now Perenara. They're offside. It's an advantage to the Hurricanes.
It was a late tackle.
Was it a late shot, was it? Well, they're going to get the penalty and a chance to win the game.
Number 18.
Peter Gus Suakula with the late shot. And he'll have to watch this kick now, because if this sails over, the Hurricanes will go away with the win. Geordie Barrett to win the game. Geordie Barrett with the penalty, and the Hurricanes take it at the death, 27-24.
League has moved on. Rugby in many ways has moved backwards. After watching that previous clip and looking at a typical breakdown situation here, and particularly the defence line, surely lawmakers can see a big problem here. Now, before we look at the amendment that would bring about the most positive change to the current shape of the game, the term breakdown zone must be defined. First of all, let's look at the current defence line and a typical situation or breakdown situation we have here. It's the line we know that's parallel to the goal line and through the hindmost part of the last man at the breakdown. Now, the breakdown zone is defined as that area which is 5 metres behind the current defence line and 5 metres to either side. Now, we must fully understand what that breakdown zone is before we move on to the most important amendment, Amendment number 5, dealing with new defence lines at the breakdown. Amendment 5, the 5 metre defence line at breakdown. Since 1996, when the use it or lose it law was introduced, breakdown possessions now outnumber set play possessions 4-1. Prior to 1996, set play and breakdown possessions were roughly equal. The current 0 metre defence line at the breakdown is stifling variety in attack and has transformed rugby from a running game into a collision game that at times looks more like rugby league before limited tackles. Amendment 5A, the defence line for players within the breakdown zone, now defined, is the line parallel to the goal line and behind the hindmost part of the player at the back of the breakdown. Amendment 5B, the defence line for players outside the breakdown zone is a line parallel to the goal line and 5 metres behind the hindmost part of the player at the back of the breakdown. Now, with defenders outside the breakdown zone having to be back 5 metres, or at least making an effort to get back 5 metres, hopefully we'll see more ball movement and an increase in the width of some of the attacks. Of course, there'll always be pick and drives and short pass hit-ups, but hopefully defenders within the breakdown zone will offer some discouragement. Amendment 6, the line-out. Teams must have 7 players in the line-out. B, no line-out to be set inside the 10-metre zone. C, each team must have a receiver, and the receiver of the team not with the throw must mirror the position of his opponent. The line-out ends when a maul is formed. Now, it's understandable that initially these amendments may appear controversial, but the reasons for them will be made clear, and hopefully the amendments seen to contribute to the game's attractiveness. Together with and allowing for the amendments above, all laws relating to the line-out, particularly spacing and movement of players in the line-out, to be rigorously adhered to. Line-out infringements occur at most line-outs and are not drawing sanctions. Certain infringements give an advantage to the throwing team and others to the team defending. Despite the extra space that would be created by these amendments, such as the dominance of forward play and forward thinking in all areas of the modern game, we would probably still see rolling mauls, plays off the back of the line-out and one-pass crash balls instead of backline movements. However, at least small Amendment 7A would prevent a try being scored directly from a continuous rolling maul formed from a line-out. 7A we've yet to see, but basically it states rolling mauls must be restricted to a maximum of 5 metres. Although not an amendment, it was mentioned in the previous slide. All laws relating to the line-out, particularly spacing and movement of players in the line-out, to be rigorously adhered to. Now, if you go to the World Rugby law book and look at stipulated positions at the line-out, I'm not going to quote exactly what those stipulated positions are, but we'll quickly run through the main ones. First of all, a line-out must be formed between the 5 and 15 metre lines under current law, not the amendment we looked at earlier on. You must have a minimum of two players each team in the line-out. The defending team can't have more players than the team with the throw. The defenders not in the line-out must be back 10 metres. The thrower must not cross the touchline before releasing the ball. Teams do not have to have receivers, but if they do, they must be positioned 2 metres from their players in the line-out. The non-throwing team must have a player in the zone being defined between the touchline and the 5 metre line, and he must position 2 metres from the mark of touch and 2 metres from the 5 metre line. There are others, but they're the ones of concern at this stage. Now, it appears that in almost every game, players and sometimes the referees either do not know these law requirements or, in the referee's case, are simply happy to disregard them. Now, at times, players not abiding by these laws can give either team an unintended advantage, and that's what we're going to look at. A few videos will follow now in order to help justify our stated amendments. The first is an official clip from 2021 World Rugby official laws. One stipulation not mentioned before, but is very important, is that neither team can have 2 receivers.
Two receivers. Not quick enough. Want you in quicker. 2 receivers.
In this video, the referee clearly knows and understands the line-out positioning and movement laws and insists on them being adhered to.
Stop. Guys, Murray, with the line-out. When we set up the line-out, they're setting good defence. I want to clearly know who's in the line-out. I don't know if Tom was half or not, okay? Yeah, okay, so clearly be out of the halfback. Okay, just reset. Guys, they're going to set up clearly. Stay there as well. Yep.
Ironically,
Yep,
the poor pass that found Grass created
See ya, sit. Are you in?
the situation.
Stop. Guys, it's the same as red. I need it very clear. Do you have a halfback? Okay, you've got to make it very clear. That's one each way now. The next time it's free kick.
Forced to go for a scrappy ball.
The second clip there features a game between the Reds and the Force in 2021. In this clip, very few line-out laws are not being broken. Here, though, fortunately, it ends up having no real effect on the game. But just looking at the positioning of the people now in line-out, participating in the line-out. First of all, notice the Reds, in fact, have 2 halfbacks or two receivers, and that's illegal. The second receiver, McDermott, is obviously 1, and he's more than 2 metres back from the players in his line-out. The second one is Harry Wilson, who's less than 2 metres back from the line-out, but they shouldn't have 2 anyway. And obviously his positioning there is so that if the ball is caught at number 2 in the line-out, he's in an ideal position to assist with an early drive. Look at the spacing between the line-out. It's supposed to be 1 metre spacing, that is a half a metre each from players in the line-out and the line of touch. Looking at the receiver from the Force, now there's no 15 metre line shown there, but no players can be outside the 15 metre line. Now if he's not outside the 15 metre line there, he's very, very close to it. They're supposed to be inside the 15 metre line. Looking at the Force player also in the area between the sideline and the 5 metre line, he also was supposed to be 2 metres back from the line of touch. Well, in this case, he's at least a good 5. Now the clip will play and we'll see what eventuates.
The Rebels front lifting pod quite successfully executes a running jump lift, actually throwing the jumper, with the lifters not bringing the jumper back to ground safely. Also, as an obvious consequence, the jumper crosses the line.
10 straight, and that one is...
We've had a look at some of the line-out laws, and the clips now will show how teams gain an unintended advantage from simply not adhering to them. Another law not yet mentioned is featured in this clip, but featuring a match between the Reds and the Blues this time, also Super Rugby 2021. Once the line-out is formed, players from the team throwing in may not leave the line-out other than to change positions.
Time after time, players in a line-out infringe by leaving the line-out after it is formed and before the throw is made. Now, this is done to give the attacking team the advantage of an early drive, which is very difficult to counter once the attacking team has gained the initial momentum.
And they set up this devastating maul. The Blues have used it to great effect this year.
The next clip to be featured is the game between the All Blacks and Springboks in 2021, the second test played on the Gold Coast. Look carefully at player positioning in the line-out. In this clip, clearly there is more than a metre between players in the line-out. Faf de Klerk is positioned illegally, being outside the 5-metre line, and the All Black scrum half, if not outside the 15-metre line, is very, very close to it. Assuming he is legal and he's just inside the 15-metre line, his positioning, however, gives the All Blacks an advantage in defence, as he can now not only cover possible movements at the back of the line-out, but he is now in a position to be part, effectively, of the backline defence, covering the Springboks' first receiver. Now, the idea of the amendment where the defender's team's receiver must mirror the position of the throwing team's receiver is to try to prevent this from happening and to lessen the disadvantage to the attacking backline. Now, it'd be no good here, the All Black receiver mirroring Faf de Klerk, because they'd both be illegal. But if Faf de Klerk was in a legal position, you could see how he could pull the All Black receiver inside and away from being in that effective position to defend.
That's a bit. Quick off the top to de Klerk.
The next clip also was a game played in 2021, same venue, the Gold Coast, between Australia and Argentina. Now, it's worthwhile here just stopping the clip for a moment. You'll notice, first of all, Australia elects not to have a receiver. That's perfectly legitimate, and the normal scrum half is positioning himself in that between the sideline or the sideline and the 5-metre line, also perfectly legitimate. However, look at the Argentinian, the Puma scrum half. He's supposed to be 2 metres from his players in the line-out. Now, he's a good 5 or 6 metres from the players in the line-out. Now, here we have a situation where an advantage is being given or being taken by the attacking team by not adhering to one of the laws of the line-out. Let's see what happens.
Montoya to the back. Bruni up for Bertrand. Again, that looks forward. It's play on.
The pass was obviously thrown forward.
Right, now the play, look, I'm the last one to stop variation in attack in rugby, but once again, here the attacking team has an advantage by not adhering to a line-out law. So look, we either get rid of line-out laws that are being disregarded basically, or make sure that players adhere to them. Otherwise, there's total inconsistency. You'll have games where referees will pull up that play and other games where they won't. So it's probably as much about being consistent with referees' rulings as much as anything else. Just returning to Amendment 6A, teams must have no less than 7 players in the line-out. Recall that earlier in this presentation it was shown that the average amount of time backs, except for the scrum half, spend basically being inactive is over 50 minutes, in games where an average total duration of around 90 minutes, including time-offs. There is little doubt that rugby has more and more become a forwards-dominated game, with backline set plays, moves as they were known, becoming a rarity. In the normal scrum, all forwards are involved. Forwards have a much greater involvement in the massive number of breakdowns, and over 80% of all lineouts now involve less than 7 players, the most common configuration being 5-man lineouts. This means that at line-out time, both attack and defence lines regularly have as many as 5 additional players, making pure backline play, as we know it, difficult or even impossible. It must be remembered that one of the goals of this list of amendments is to unashamedly create greater involvement of backline players. The final clip here is the match between Australia and Scotland, played in 2021.
Laws related to the line-out, either directly or to play at line-out time, are continually being flouted by teams, while other minor technical infringements receive frustratingly pedantic investigations by match officials. Let's look at the try scored from the line-out/rolling maul by Scotland in their recent test match against Australia.
And the backs were too keen.
Scott number 7 legitimately changes position in the line-out before the line-out commences. However, before the ball leaves the thrower's hands, defining the commencement of the line-out, he leaves the line-out, effectively giving Scotland 2 receivers, which is illegal. The reason for doing this, of course, is to be in a position to assist with an early drive. Once the ball leaves the catcher's hands, the line-out is over. Before any maul can be formed, the Scots at the front of the line-out create a driving formation which is illegal and constitutes obstruction.
Now they transfer, there's Watson in the middle of it. Watson is over! And Scotland get the first try.
That said, the Scots have played some of the most innovative and expansive rugby in the world in recent times. Now, this play was executed with great precision, and with only a couple of tweaks, the try could well have been scored without any infringements. Amendment 7, the maul. 7A, rolling mauls are to be restricted to a maximum of 5 metres. And 7B, defenders now allowed to collapse a rolling or driving maul. From 182 elite-level matches analysed since 2000, there has been no evidence of any serious injury resulting from collapse mauls. Rod McQueen, a former Australian coach, was member of 11-man Laws Project Group, which after 4 years and gathering statistics from many hundreds of rugby matches played in England, Wales, Australia, New Zealand and others, found that no serious injuries were recorded from collapse mauls. Despite unanimous support from delegates, intentional collapsing of the maul was one of the ELVs that was rejected by World Rugby. Potential benefits, together with 5B, no line-out to be set inside the 10-metre zone, Amendment 7A above would prevent continuous rolling mauls or rolling maul tries from lineouts. And 7B, defenders allowed to collapse a rolling maul, provides defenders with an effective method of countering mauls set up anywhere on the field and particularly close to their own goal line. The effect of both amendments would be to reduce the number of penalties and yellow cards and reduce the level of frustration and even anger felt by the majority of supporters.
Amendment 8. The flying wedge or cavalry charge.
Players in support of a ball carrier must not latch onto the ball carrier prior to contact. This amendment also is to be used in New Zealand at New Zealand club level in 2022. It's another one of those approved variations. Why? The term flying wedge is defined as involving 2 support players latched onto the ball carrier. Now, this action is just as dangerous in certain circumstances, even when a single support player is involved.
In there.
The official World Rugby Law Book describes this as a flying wedge and states that it is illegal. Now, attacking teams often use this tactic when hammering the goal line. Why isn't the tactic ever penalised?
Looking around. Excellent. Centimetres here, the Blues. There for you on it. Tuinukuafa is close. Now they drive over. Try time to the Blues. Good ball. Let him go. They're close to the Blues. That's how...
Now, early in the game, this occurred. Hamish Stewart, about 90 kilograms, opposes the combined weight of 3 Chiefs players in illegal flying wedge formation. Combined weight would approximately be about 340 kilograms. Who was in danger here? What results?
They can be making very, very easy and cheap meters. Penalty advantage.
10. You've used no arms in the tackle.
In field, it's a nice play off the ruck.
Yeah, referees also looking out for this. That's putting the attacking player in a dangerous position, just aiming at the knees. No attempt at making a legal tackle.
In terms of danger, would you prefer to be Hamish Stewart or one of the 3 members of that flying wedge?
Potential benefits of these amendments. They reduce the number of events where the ball carrier and multiple support players are in contact or latched prior to contact. Protect the first up tackler, who can be faced with a combined force of 2 or more opposing players, as we have seen.